Hello my friends, my name is Matt and this channel is called What Matters to Matt. Now today I want to talk about something a little bit different. This is Matt's marathon mistakes. Now the reason why I want to bring this up is that next May 2022, I have decided to sign up for my first marathon. Having never run a 5K, never run a 10K, never run a half marathon, I decided to just go for it and sign up for my first full marathon because I love to challenge myself. Now part of the problem is when I challenge myself, when I want to do these things, a lot of times it's all about the process for me. Yes, the final result, the goal is so important, and I'll get to that. But a lot of it is about the process and enjoying myself and really feeling that I'm going for it. And sometimes that means I don't absolutely go with all the best case scenarios or the best advice I can find online. Don't get me wrong, I am such an advocate of doing all your research, do everything you can to be the best and achieve the best goals that you can. And there's lots of information out there on how to run and train for a marathon. And I definitely 100% like to follow that. I'm a huge numbers guy. I like to analyze every little thing about my training, whether that be in weights or in running, anything at all. I am a big numbers guy, but sometimes life gets in the way. Sometimes you just need to do things your way. So what I want to do is I want to kind of create a series of videos where I'm talking about my winter marathon prep, which I'm going through right now. But I also want to highlight a few things that I'm doing slightly differently that I'm calling mistakes, not because they might result in me doing things and ultimately not being able to achieve my goals, but because they don't always fit the perfect scenario of what a good marathon training looks like. Honestly, what's super funny is yesterday when I got this idea, it came from my son, which is where I get a lot of my advice. Okay, not all of my marathon advice comes from my 7-year-old son, but a lot of my advice, because I love to do the things that he wants me to do. I love to be there for him. So a lot of times I'm listening pretty close to what he's suggesting to me and what he's doing. And yesterday morning, I was filming because I had a really early morning run and I had another idea for a video. I've decided to make this one and make these mistakes videos. But he said this. Dylan, what are you doing now? Watching. You know it's like 5:30 in the morning on a Saturday.
Oh, that's how I get to bed late.
What's that?
That's how I get more time in the day.
And it occurred to me that losing sleep and not getting enough sleep was one of the big mistakes that I was going to make throughout this marathon prep. Not because I didn't want more sleep, but because for me, I really need to feel that my training is dialed in, that I'm doing the right amount of training, or probably more training than I need to do. And that's probably another one of my mistakes that I'll touch on later in another video. But it feels like that in order to get all the training in that I need to get, and with life being what it is and life being as busy as it is, I don't get enough sleep. And that happened with yesterday morning's training. I got up at 4:30. I went out to the kitchen. I made myself a coffee. I did all of these things that I normally do on the average day, and I realized that I'm not getting the sleep. And what was really funny was that clip that I showed you earlier about my son and him saying that he was getting up really early. I'm taking that advice. The reason why I was filming him in the first place was that I was shocked that at 5 a.m., 5 o'clock in the morning, he was sitting there on the couch watching videos about Minecraft, and I was thinking, this is ridiculous. Why aren't you sleeping? Why was I not sleeping? But just like anything else, and just like these mistakes that I make, I want to make sure that they are informed mistakes, if that makes any sense whatsoever. So I went back and I looked that up, did a quick Google search on different things around not getting enough sleep. And one of the things that came up first for me was a TED Talk that was done. It's actually a couple years old now, but it's got over 7 million views. It's by Matt Walker. It's called Sleep is Your Superpower. Now it's interesting in this video, he's not talking about athletics and endurance specifically very much in the video, but he does go on to talk about the most important muscle in our body, and certainly one of the muscles that we monitor constantly when we're going through our marathon prep, at least in the marathon prep I'm doing. your heart. And one of the statistics that he brought up that really drove home this idea of how important sleep was to your cardiovascular health was around daylight savings time. Now, in his video, in his speech, he mentions that when we lose that hour of sleep due to daylight savings time, the day following that, we actually see an increase of 24% in heart attacks. Now, he also says, conversely, if you look at the day following the day that we gain an extra hour of sleep because of daylight saving time, you actually see a decrease of 21% in cardiovascular or in heart attacks specifically. So that really kind of highlights just how important getting sleep is when it comes to your heart health. Now, if we dive even deeper down that rabbit hole of how long can somebody go without sleep, or how does sleep actually affect your overall health, we can go all the way back to 1963 when the world record was set for the longest time without any sleep. And he did this for 11 days and 25 minutes. He was monitored during the whole time. Of course, there have been a couple of people who have claimed that they've gone longer than that. Now, of course, along with that, when they ran any tests, when they were speaking to him, even though he was able to answer them and seemed fairly confident in his answers, there were a lot of problems with his cognitive ability, his inability to think clearly, his inability to problem solve. But if you're anything like me and you're focusing on your marathon prep and thinking ahead about what your actual marathon is going to be like, you're probably wondering, how does sleep actually affect that? Because for me, it's very difficult to get what would be the proper amount of sleep. And I know they say 7 to 8 hours per sleep for the average person, but if you're training for a marathon, if you're training for an endurance event, they actually suggest that you get either 9 or 10 hours sleep. Now, for me, I call this a mistake that I'm not getting that much sleep, but the reality is I'm just not able to balance all of life's things and still get that kind of sleep. So I did look to the internet. I did look for a couple of studies out there that specifically focused on endurance athletes and the amount of sleep that they're getting and how that affected their ability to train and their ability on the day of the event. So one of the interesting studies that I was able to find was from Medicine and Science in Sports and Exercise. And what they did in this study was they actually used cyclists, but the focus was on endurance athletes in general. So it is translatable over to runners. And in this study, one of the things that they found was they took a fairly small sample size. So again, take it for what it's worth, but it is an interesting look at the case and look to see what it actually did to the folks that they either restricted or gave more sleep. One group, they offered them 30% more sleep. By offered, they got them to sleep 30% more. And the other group, they actually reduced it by 30%. So if you're looking at the average person sleeping about 7 hours a day, you're talking more like a little bit over 8 hours, or reducing it all the way down to 5.5 hours sleep. And after giving them either more sleep or less sleep over just a few days, they had them do a time trial that normally would take them 58.8 minutes, and they found that the people that got less sleep, actually that got reduced to 60.4 minutes, which was a 3% decline in performance. What was interesting was it went the absolute opposite way for the people that actually got more sleep than they normally would. They went from 58.8 minutes to 56.8 minutes, which was a 3% going in the other direction. Now, one of the major problems with this is there's far less information out there about how this affects your overall training. Yes, if you're able to measure just a few days, but long term, how much does a lack of sleep affect your overall training? There's just a ton of different factors out there, a lot of uncontrollables that makes it a little bit harder to measure a significant sample size to look at whether losing an hour of sleep or gaining an hour of sleep actually has a positive or negative impact on your overall training. We can guess that it probably does, and we do know that it affects your ability to push forward. We do know that having less sleep affects your ability to think clearly, affects your ability to make clear and quick and concise decisions, but we don't have a lot of information, necessarily concrete information, about how it affects your training. All that to say, leading up to the day of your actual event, it seems pretty apparent that it's pretty important to make sure that you do get the proper amount of sleep, or at least enough sleep that you're feeling refreshed and ready to go. I know that sounds really obvious, but I think one of the hardest things, and I think one of the things that we might not think about or we might not plan about leading up to the day, unless we're actually paying attention to it, is that we're getting the appropriate sleep. Maybe you're having to travel to your event. Maybe you're just super excited or nervous like I will be because it will be my first marathon ever. but trying to find a way, trying to plan leading up to that event, how you're getting the best sleep or the appropriate amount of sleep is going to be really, really important for us marathon runners, for us people that are just trying to push the envelope and be the best that we can be on that day. We focus so much on all of the other things that sometimes sleep probably falls by the wayside. Now, I know towards the first of this video, I said this was one of Matt's marathon mistakes. And it may be, and it may not be. Getting a lack of sleep during my training is just something that I have to deal with right now because I just don't feel like I'm able to get both all of my training in, live the life that I'm supposed to be living right now in terms of just all the things that I have going on, and get the appropriate amount of sleep. So I'm getting a little bit less sleep than what's ideal. But that's the reason why I share these videos, is I want to bring you along for the journey. I want to share with you my first marathon prep. We're at 88 subscribers as of this morning, the last time I looked. I absolutely thank you if you are a subscriber. If you're not a subscriber and you think you're going to like my videos, if you want to come along for the ride, please, please, please consider hitting that subscribe button and hitting that bell notification so you get notified every time I put out a new video. My name is Matt, and this channel is called What Matters for Matt. And ultimately, I'll say it again, what matters to me most is my family. I'll see you in the next one.